One of the best things about the Pokemon games are the tiny details that make the world feel connected, that change your experience in the best way, or surprise you that they even thought of it in the first place. Like how they boost the encounter rate of Pokemon on Halloween in Gen 4, or how they hit a gift tentacle in Heart Gold and Soul Silver that prevents you from getting soft-locked in Cyanwood City. But on my channel, I like to dive deeper and try to find things in Pokemon that you have never heard of or ever seen before. But I think I found quite a few details that have been almost completely lost in obscurity, and I hope you enjoy what I found.
There are multiple locations in Pokemon games that seem like they should give you a Pokemon encounter, but actually won't. One example of this is the first tile of a cave in Generation 3. No Pokemon can spawn in the initial tile you land on once you step inside of a cave, and this is true for multiple other gens as well. A more interesting one is the 4 tiles surrounding the fossils in the Gen 1 games, with no encounters appearing in this whole square, even after you pick up the fossils that were laying here and complete that little event. In Pokemon Emerald, in Meteor Falls, the very first bridge that you see when you enter this cave cannot wield any encounters either. In Generation 5, there's another encounter detail like this I bet you haven't noticed either. A single tile of grass cannot wield an encounter at all in this game. It takes at least 2 grassy tiles to spawn a Pokemon. As you can see, I went into this patch well over 100 times and didn't get a single encounter. I believe this was implemented to help you grind for shaking grass encounters, even in small tight areas like this. There are many instances in Pokemon where the developers like to use the game's audio to their advantage. Here's a few examples of this. In Diamond and Pearl, your Pokemon's cry isn't always the same during battle. It's actually slightly pitched down when they have a status effect or are fainted. Here is all the audio compared. In Generation 2, the day and night battle themes are different by just barely, again with a very slight pitch change, almost unnoticeable, but it's there. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you may have noticed this title screen here changes while you progress through the story. After you beat the Elite Four and clearing the game's story, the Pokeball and book are gone from the desk and the window is open. But there's much more here actually. When you start your game, the audio of the title screen is students talking in sounds from the school atmosphere. Once you complete the game though, the audio completely changes to the triumphant classic Pokemon theme. But the neat detail here is, if before you beat the game, you turn your sound effects volume to 0, but keep your music volume at maximum, turn your Switch volume all the way up, close your game, and reopen to the title screen, after a few seconds, you'll hear a muffled version of the classic theme that plays once you beat the game. It's actually the full, entire theme. It just sounds as if you're hearing it from the other room or something. Another small detail you can notice very early on in the game in Scarlet and Violet has to do with the new emote system. There's an emote where you stick out your Pokeball, kind of classic trainer style, and the Pokeball that you stick out will always be the Pokemon that you have in the first slot in your party. For example, I have a shiny Dunsparce and a Heal Ball, and it looks like this. But what if you use this emote before you've obtained any Pokeballs at all? Surprisingly, they thought of this, and the ball you hold out won't be a normal Pokeball. It will be a strange ball. A Pokeball introduced recently that acts as a sort of placeholder Pokeball. For example, Hisuian Pokemon are in these. This might happen because it's trying to read a Pokeball and it doesn't read anything and it just defaults to a strange ball, but I think it's still pretty cool. If you have animations turned on in Pokemon Crystal, and if a Pokemon of yours is leveled to the point of evolution, but is also fainted in your party, the evolution will still happen, but during the animation for it, your Pokemon's cry won't play, and the animation that would occur also won't happen. It will just be completely still. Here it is side by side. I actually love this detail. It's a funny image, having your Pokemon evolving while laying dead in your arms. In Generation 1, if you're playing with battle animations turned off, you can see a small detail when you reach the end of the game. When you're going through the Elite Four, everything will be normal, but when it's time to fight your champion, you'll notice that it forces your battle animations back on, a sneaky little detail to add some dramatic effect. In Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, there are various references to the history of the Kanto games, but also to the original anime set in Kanto. One detail you've probably never noticed is if you walk into Brock's gym and go all the way to the end, you can get a camera angle where you can see part of the ceiling, where you can see these objects hanging down. These are actually a reference to the anime. They're sprinklers, which is a callback to how Ash originally defeated Brock in the Indigo League anime, by triggering the sprinkler system in Brock's gym.
Everyone knows about the hidden weather effect of the diamond dust that appears on certain days in Snowpoint City in Generation 4, and tons of other games in the series. It's basically common knowledge in the Pokemon community at this point, but did you know there are tons of hidden weather changes throughout the Sinnoh games, some of which I bet you have never seen before. For example, Route 213 alone has 2 different weather effects. 10 specific days out of a calendar year, it rains throughout the entirety of Route 213, something I never saw until recently. 11 days out of the year through Route 213, it has a much subtler weather effect. On these days, Route 213 will be slightly cloudy, basically a satin tint that covers the entire route. It's easier to notice side by side than it is on its own. That's why you probably have never noticed this. And it has no in-battle effects like rain does, but it is there. Route 216 has 3 different weather conditions. Most of the time it's hailing. 9 days out of the year though, like November 22nd for example, it is covered by an intense blizzard throughout the whole route. But on January 12th alone, the route is covered instead by a very light snow. Although the hail effect is still there in battle, and doesn't go away even on the very light snow day. North of there at the Acuity Lakefront, there is 2 different weather conditions. 9 days out of the year, its heavy snow and hail will be replaced by a very light snow as well. Interestingly though, one of those 9 days lines up to be on the same day that it's also lightly snowing on Route 216. The southern part of Route 212 is usually covered in a heavy rain, but it isn't always like this. 10 specific days out of the year, the route is showered in an intense thunderstorm. But the most interesting thing about this route is that one day out of the entire year, there is no rain at all. It's not entirely clear. The weather is actually classified as cloudy, the same weather effect that occurs on no other routes besides 11 days out of the year on Route 213. The one single cloudy day appears on April 30th on Platinum and May 1st in Diamond and Pearl. I'm going to tack on a small detail about weather here that I always thought was a detail, but I only recently found out when researching weather in these games that it's actually a glitch. In Diamond and Pearl, when it's raining and you use the move Thunder, you might be aware that your accuracy changes from 70 to completely bypassing accuracy checks and being guaranteed a hit. But I bet you didn't know that in these games, Thunder can hit through Protect. When your opponent uses Protect, you have a 30% chance to break right through it with Thunder while it's raining. And the same goes for Blizzard and Hail. Although this was changed in Platinum, so it turns out it was really a glitch. It's time to talk about Golden Go. This Pokemon is pretty cool actually. Given just how rare it is, I doubt too many people have messed around with it very much in game to see one interesting quirk with its ability. Good as Gold. Good as Gold is a crazy ability that makes Golden Go immune to status moves. But what's weird is how many moves are actually considered status moves by the game. The weirdest instance of this I have seen is with Ditto. If you encounter a Ditto in the wild and it attempts to transform into your Golden Go, the Good as Gold ability will block Transform. I've never thought of Transform as a status move, but I guess it is. Also, side note, while I was getting footage for this, I found a random shiny.
Tiny detail, but I love this one. In Pokemon Stadium 2, if you go to the options menu and just don't do anything and wait for a while, Azatu will show up and dance around the screen.
Generation 2 were the first games to introduce the idea of berries growing in your game. A berry tree would grow a berry once per day at midnight in these games. When Generation 3 rolled around, they decided to make this mechanic much more complex, going from a planted seed to a sapling to a fully grown berry plant. These stages would take a long amount of time in between though, counting off real-life hours in between each stage. If you were a dedicated berry gardener in these games, it would probably look a lot like checking your berries, waiting a few hours, watering them again, and so on. But a detail is that these berries have an animation that is incredibly hard to witness. When a berry goes in between stages of growth, taking hours in between them, when it changes to the next stage, it actually happens in real time and has its own animation. And this is what it looks like. You would either have to stay there and wait an incredibly long time to witness this, or come across a plot of berries at the perfect time to see this happen. But the fact is not in here. I ended up looking into this a lot more, and found out that this feature of the berries sparkling and growing in real time is actually present in many other games. Ever since Pokemon Emerald, this has actually been a staple in the series. In Heart Gold Soul Silver, this can happen to apricorn trees. It's actually a lot easier to do in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. You just wait till 12 o'clock at night, and then boom. And it's actually a thing in Pokemon Diamond Pearl Platinum as well. Berries are on the same kind of timer system that they are in Generation 3, and if you simply wait till they're about to grow, the sparkling animation will happen in real time. Leave a comment if you've ever seen this in your own game. I'm curious of how many people knew about this. Recently, I introduced a new email that you can submit Pokemon facts to. It's blueboyphinfacts@gmail.com. If you have an obscure fact, if you like the series, or if you've heard a rumor you want me to investigate, or have a small detail like this video, feel free to send it there.